Hi, everyone. It's Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net. A number of people have expressed, let's just call it concern to me today about the fact that Donald Trump has announced another run for the presidency. So I thought we'd look at the transits to his chart at the time of that announcement. And at first, I was going to call this Much Ado About Nothing. But the more I look at it, the more I think it's much ado about money. And I could talk probably for 45 minutes about this. I'm going to give you the big points. The first thing I want to mention is that Mars retrograde, going back over something, going back over words, is in his 10th house of career and public reputation. It's heading right for his sun, which is like it's real personal to him. This is him trying to recreate, start a narrative again. And Mars is, because it's retrograde, it's moving to lower numbers and it's making a square to Neptune, the planet of confusion, lies, deceits, misinformation, the big lie, in his 7th house of partners and open enemies. So he's kicked up a bunch of things that might have been laid to rest, and he's bringing them back up for discussion. And there may not really be any substance to this. Mars squaring Neptune in Pisces is a bit like increasing the fog and not really being able to put your hands around it. But there's the potential for a pretty strong gaslighting streak in this. Regardless, without passing any judgment on what is actually being said or being done here, it would be consistent with speech that doesn't really quite make sense, that seems a bit unhinged. There were a lot of really nasty comments very quickly on Twitter about the amount of sniffing that was going on during the speech, and you can draw your own conclusions as to what that might have to do with. There have been all kinds of suggestions about Adderall being pulverized for entertainment purposes only. I'm not suggesting anything stronger than that. There hasn't been any indication of that. Nonetheless, all of this is consistent, and it's not a real firm footing. It's not a clear message. It's not anything new. It's going back over old territory. That's the first thing. But the second thing I really want to talk about is what is going on with the moon. The moon is the mood. The moon is the public. It's kind of the vibe of what's happening. And the moon in at 18 Leo is trining his own natal moon at 21 Sagittarius. He's doing this from the safety of his home, from his own protected place. The moon is in the 4th house in his natal chart, home and family. It's in this private place of retreat in the transiting chart. But much more importantly, when you're looking at an event chart, when you're planning a time to do something, and you want to minimize obstacles or problems, you're very careful about the placement of the moon, and you do not want hard aspects to the moon. Well, the moon is moving into is basically opposite Saturn in Aquarius in the 6th house. And Saturn is all about delays, burdens, obligations, being called to account, breaks. So this announcement has built-in breaks. It's not a skyrocket. It's not like a Roman candle shooting off into the sky. It has a built-in dampening that goes to it. And there are a number of things that have happened already that play out some of the symbolism of the moon opposing Saturn in Aquarius. The most immediate and almost hysterically obvious one was security personnel at Mar-a-Lago preventing guests from actually leaving. So physically containing Saturn, the public, the moon. Mainstream media, a number of outlets didn't cover it. I think MSNBC did not cover it. A number of other ones reportedly cut him off pretty soon into it, didn't cover the whole speech. A lot of mainstream publications that have previously been very much pro-Trump, the ones owned by Rupert Murdoch in particular, have been really poo-pooing the whole thing, putting the damper on it, having extremely snarky and debilitating news coverage of it. Major GOP donors have pulled out, Saturn being people in authority. That would be both Murdoch and the money people. But there's a lot more going on with the moon than just this square, this opposition, and that is the square that the moon, you look at applying aspects, the square that the moon is making to Saturn, and then ultimately Mercury, and then Venus, all in Scorpio, down there around his IC, around the doorway to his foundation, his home, his family, his real estate. When you're planning an event, you really want to avoid squares to the moon because things tend to have problems. They tend to not work out. So not only do we have the break probability, the slowness, the obligations, the ramifications and consequences, potential of Saturn and Aquarius opposing the moon, we have the moon squaring big moneyed interests, things having to do with investigations, that's Scorpio, huge amounts of money, that's also Scorpio, and information coming out involving all of it. The pressure on all of this, because it is a T-square, is coming equally from Saturn and from the moon, and the placement that is most obviously and immediately getting the pressure is that sun at 23 Scorpio. So something's got to give. And all of this is about money, big money, pushing for appeals for money, and the slowness, the burdens, the obstacles play a role in the appeals for money. Now, also that Saturn and Aquarius, and the whole composite here, all of this together as a formula, could also be speaking to investigations of him, litigation involving his money. I believe there was a pretty significant day in court in New York State Court with his chief financial officer on the stand, tying him directly to a number of money-related bookkeeping decisions that really that go to the heart of the New York State Attorney General's case for fraud claims against Trump Organization. That coincided with this. He may be using this announcement, again with money, as a reason to get people to send him money or to go for fundraising. There could be out of this more, there could be claims of I am a victim. That's that Mars squaring Neptune again that I talked about initially. I need money. This is political. This is persecution. Scorpio could have a persecution aspect to it as well. But this little formula right here alone really makes it a very difficult road for him to get anywhere with actually achieving the nomination. But it does speak to the money that could be coming out of his going for this. There are a few other things worth mentioning. Let's go back again to the retrograde Mars in the 10th house, in the career house. the most public house. Um, so it's going to be stirring. If you'll notice, his sun is at 22 Gemini, and it's exactly squaring 22 Neptune, Pisces at 20, Neptune at 22, Pisces. So Mars pushing in on that could have a lot of talk coming out of him. There could have been a feeling that he had to speak up, he had to say something. But that long standing square between his sun and Neptune in Pisces is an indicator of perhaps his own thought processes not being clear at this point. They're unlikely. Someone else might have made it more of preaching a message with some widespread, uplifting spiritual content to it. But given the track record of decades of his communications, this is just more saying things that probably can't be tied down at all, and a good probability that it's possible that he is not separating himself from all of these things. In other words, could be he thinks what he's saying is right. And you'll notice that, okay, so that as Mars is going, as it's going backwards in its retrograde, it's going to oppose his moon and then go across his north node and then hit Uranus. So be on the lookout for something changing his goals, his agenda, his messaging. And you know what? Let me just take a moment here to look when Mars is going to hit 17 Gemini, because that could be important. And that is going to be very early in December. It actually hits that point at sometime during the day on December 3rd, and it hangs out there until December 6th. There's a target time for a very sudden development, kind of knocking the wind out of his sails or causing a change, a course correction. As Mars continues its retrograde, it's ultimately going to go to 8 degrees Gemini. That's where its direct station is going to be on January 19th. And when it's at, I'm sorry, it looks like that. When it hits 8 Gemini, let's just clear everything. All right. So when it hits 8 Gemini, it will exactly aspect his natal Mercury. That's it's on January 19th. So that's built into this announcement that there will be some other layer of messaging happening when Mars hits its direct station. And this type of aspect is not comfortable. It's something that you want to make go away and go away and go away. And it just keeps nudging at you. There's a challenge to step up and do things differently. Probably something will be involving family communications at that point. Also, as that is happening, so that's what happens as it goes to the end of the retrograde. But right now, at the time of the announcement, Mars is in exactly that type of aspect with his natal Saturn in Cancer, family stuff, discomfort, his being the head, the patriarch. This also speaks to his chief financial officer testifying in court in ways that are very, very damaging to him on the day that this announcement was made. I don't know if anyone can confirm this. I've seen on Twitter where we know nothing necessarily means at all what it says anymore, like it ever was highly verifiable in the first place. But there are indications floating around that his daughter has made a statement that she will not support him. for a run with the presidency. And if that is true, that would be an indication of this really uncomfortable semi-sextile between Mars and Saturn in Aquarius. I'm sorry, Saturn in Cancer right there. One other thing I want to point out to you. Now, I'm using the chart that is most widely used for Trump, with a 29-degree Leo ascendant, which puts the fixed star Regulus on the ascendant, and it's all the gold and acting like he's king. But there is another time that is given, and it's earlier in the morning, and a few things are in different houses with this chart. And one of them, and this time came to me from an astrologer who knows Marla Maples, his second wife, and he said he got this from her. So if we do that, this moon, this very challenged moon at the time of the announcement, would be smack on the ascendant, and here, Saturn would be smack on the descendant. Saturn right there in the house of partners and open enemies. So that's kind of an indicator of all these people turning on him, and also of government inquiry and investigation happening. And with that, we've also got the T-square pushing all of that, Scorpio fully in the fourth house of his foundation, his family, whatever he's been doing at Mar-a-Lago or with his money. That would be a big part of it. The other thing that changes and makes things very interesting is that the Mars retrograde, if this time is correct, is starting in his house of hopes and dreams, hopes and wishes. And so it would be reviving something he wants for himself. This isn't service and leadership like a 10th house sun might be. This is something he wants for himself. And it is forming a square to Neptune in this chart in the 8th house of other people's money, joint resources. The 8th house is also one of the 2 houses of crimes and secrets in the chart, the other one being the 12th house. Another thing that I find very interesting about this chart is that it has an 8-degree midheaven, which means that the Taurus new moon solar eclipse at the end of April this year would have been smack on it, because it was at 10 Taurus. So that would have hit the reset button for his affecting his career and public reputation. And that one also exactly squared his Pluto in Leo in the 12th house of hidden things. Pluto, big money, power, crimes, secrets, big money. Can I say money some more? Anyway, it's much ado about money, no matter how you look at this. And for those of you who have been hyperventilating about what this might mean, actually, it could be as early as when Mars hits that Uranus in the 11th house of dreams and wishes in this chart, in his public 10th house in the chart that most people use, where we start to see something very different. That's at the beginning of December. Honestly, I would never have counseled a client to make this type of life-changing big announcement under these transits. So hope you found it interesting. Let's watch and see how it plays out. Like, share, subscribe. You can find my forecasts on this Professional Aquarian channel, also at my site, empowermentunlimited.net. Lots of stuff at my Patreon, all kinds of links below. Thanks for liking and sharing.